Part 9. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 81. Chapter 81 Software binding successful. Sister Ping Ping is wearing a bohemian dress with ethnic characteristics. The silver jewelry she wears makes the silver bells ring with her movements, which is very nice. Her arms were spread out and waving in the vast grassland. The camera pans across her face and onto the lush grassland behind her. The great rivers, magnificent and vast, are all within sight. The mountains and rivers of our motherland are as bright as a song. Just one look at them makes people unable to help but burst into tears and fall in love with them. She skillfully greeted the audience in the live broadcast room. Her lively voice was like the accompaniment of the grassland, and her vitality was growing wildly. Long time no see, I'm your big friend Sister Ping Ping. This is the Huainan West Plain, and behind me is the unique lake, Butterfly Lake. It's like spring here all year round, with hundreds of flowers blooming. It's a city of flowers. From our position, we can see a cloudless sky and lush greenery. Speaking of this, the emotional Sister Ping Ping paused, her eyes shining with bright light, like stars in the dark night. To be honest, when I first saw this place, I almost couldn't speak. Nature is a miraculous craftsmanship, and every inch of the mountains and rivers has been carefully carved. And our motherland is vast and rich in resources and has these beautiful scenery. You don't have to go out of the country to see the 4 distinct seasons, hundreds of flowers blooming in spring, see glacier art, and understand the local customs. I am always proud to be born in this country. Just like the mountains and water behind me, and the blooming flowers, this is our unique romance. Although the audience in the live broadcast room was incited by Sister Ping Ping's passionate speech, they were still a little confused. It's strange, the black subtitles become redder and redder as I read them. Ah, what's going on? Isn't what I'm watching a baby variety show? Why are you giving me value now? In fact, Fat Director's programs have always had valuable aspects, and he has always been tied to the mainstream. But this time it's too obvious, isn't it? It's even a bit like taking an oath. The fat guide who was watching the barrage in the live broadcast room was wearing a dark green hat and a walkie-talkie in his hand, looking at the barrage with burning eyes. It seems like he is looking for bad guys hidden among the crowd. Those bad people who want to fish in troubled waters and separate everyone. The affairs of Huainan Xingxin orphanage were covered up by those people. This is everyone's dereliction of duty. But this time, they regained their strength, got ready, and were ready to catch all those black things in one fell swoop. This time Fat Director is very different from the last time, and there have been some changes in the staff around him. These people are all stronger and taller than the last time, and they look at the live broadcast room with serious expressions. They are silent and quiet, hidden from the public. But what made them wary was not just what happened to Lu Lin. Also, they found the last words that belong only to their comrades. And those last words were the truth that she could not tell. She died in this spring blooming city, her body torn apart by the silent mud. Her voice was lost in the darkness. She seemed to have left nothing behind. But the passing geese leave traces, even if they pass by briefly, they will leave traces. This time, they finally caught those dark tails. It's their turn to take action. On the other side, Tang Wan and his party came to this vast grassland. All children are wearing children's watches with the latest positioning system on their wrists. On the surface, these watches appear to be for communication and issuing tasks. In fact, these watches are equipped with virus devices. There is a fragmented virus in the watch that can locate devices trying to change the watch's system. Although this system was made by a child, there is nothing we can do about it. This child is a well-known software genius. After the software passes the test, it is put into use. Fu Wenzi and Chen Chuo looked at the watches in their hands, looked at each other and raised their eyebrows. Tangwan also tasted something different from what Sister Pingping said just now. Very strange. Sister Pingping's eyes have been fixed on the camera, and there is an unprecedented firmness in her eyes, as if she has some faith. Tangwan felt a little familiar with those eyes. It seemed as if she had seen eyes like that in her memory. The cameraman beside her is also silent, like a silent monument. Just standing there gives people a sense of security. Among the children present, Sujiajia and Liu were probably the only ones out of the situation. Sujiajia was a little surprised by the nonsensical remarks made by the host, but she didn't take it to heart. Although these words were somewhat different from those in the previous life, the location they chose in the end was also the same. In a previous life, the second season of New Dad also chose this place. It's just that I didn't choose a place so close to nature in my previous life, but chose to be in a city. Sujiajia didn't take this difference to heart. After all, she was reborn, and Tangwan was on the show. It was certain that she would be different from her previous life. Thinking of this, Sujiajia did not forget her first priority. I have not forgotten what my mother said. We must not let Tangwan become popular. Tangwan cannot be allowed to become a celebrity around those big shots. Sujiajia is not smart, and even in the eyes of this group of geniuses, she is considered stupid. Her advantage is that she is ordinary, and so are her shortcomings. Hence, she cannot understand the situation and can only act based on her emotions and existing understanding. She once again chose Tangwan, who looked the best, and walked towards her. Sujiajia's movements were too fast. When she ran towards Tangwan, it was like a galloping wind. He was still saying, "Wan Wan. Long time no see." As she spoke, she raised her children's watch and shook it at Tangwan. Her tone was gentle and expectant. "Mom bought me a children's watch. Let's become friends, right?" She clearly used it as a question, but the action was irresistible and she placed it in front of Tangwan. Tangwan's eyes crossed Sujiajia's face, looking at her intact appearance, and for a moment she suspected that what she saw and heard that night was all a dream. But the wounds scratched by the branches on his body still reminded him that none of that was a dream. Tangwan narrowed his eyes, the sheep ears on his head moved slowly, and added his personal children's watch and Sujiajia as friends. At the same time, in a group of only 5 people, a software with a starry sky pattern was running at high speed. It is written in a line of small fonts. Program starting. The program is being installed. Successful installation. Destroying. Destroyed successfully. Auto update. Automatic upgrade successful. Account has been bound, data transfer begins. This is the editor who is here to wish you all a happy new year. Good luck in the year of the dragon. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 82. Tangwan put the children's watch back as if nothing had happened, and then his eyes fell on Sister Pingping, seeming to be very interested in what she said. Fu Wenzi, who knew what Tangwan had done, turned his head and glanced when he heard Sujiajia's voice. After Tangwan had settled everything, the corners of his mouth slightly curved, as if he had seen something interesting. Through lakes and plains, the group came to the moist forest. It was clear that they just crossed a river, and all the scenery seemed to have suddenly opened a different prelude. Originally it was a vast field of vision, but at this moment, everything felt cold and damp. The audience in the live broadcast room started to speak, with schadenfreude in their tone, saying that this was the basic operation of the fat director. I laughed so hard, I really thought that the fat director had found out his conscience and knew how to let everyone live a good life for a few days. Laughing too early, the faces of the little cubs almost lost their composure. Actually, the expressions of the little boys are pretty good, mainly because of Brother Lin's expression, which just collapsed. I really thank you, you are so trendy that I will kill you. It's really too trendy, Ha 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 ha. The people upstairs laughed so loudly that it hurt my eyes. Different from the hilarious barrage in the live broadcast room, the children under the camera lens can even be considered quiet. They followed the direction quietly, only occasionally showing an unhappy expression to express a hint of true thoughts. At the end of the day, these children are carefully selected by the Fat Guide, and they are basically sensible children. Even Go 11, who has always had a bad temper, just frowned, complained in a low voice, and followed his inactive father further inside. From time to time, Go UN would put his hand on the top of Go 11's head, using Go 11 as a crutch. Tang Wan holds Lu Lin in his hand. Sometimes when he sees edible mushrooms, he bends down to pick them up. It's just that her hands are too small after all, and there are too few mushrooms she can grasp. In the end, Lu Lin couldn't stand it anymore, so he stretched out his hand and put the mushroom on his clothes that was about to fall out of Tang Wan's hand. He slightly lifted the hem of his clothes to resemble a pocket, vaguely revealing his attractive waistline and looming abdominal muscles. Looks really beautiful and delicious. The atmosphere in the live broadcast room suddenly became lively. Almost at this moment, the popularity of the live broadcast room suddenly occupied the top 3 in the hot search list. Tang Wan subconsciously wanted to cover Lu Lin's belly with her hands, but when she lowered her head, she saw her dirty hands again. She retracted her hand, looked up at Lu Lin, who had a stinky face and gentle movements, curled up the corners of her lips and smiled. Lu Lin said angrily, "I still have the nerve to laugh." The movements of his hands carefully protected the mushrooms on his clothes, and did not let any mushrooms fall to the ground. The sunlight above our heads spreads down through the gaps in the woods. The plankton in the air has no fixed place to live. Under the sunlight, it forms the Tyndall effect. That beam of light happened to hit Tang Wan's face, coating her face with a warm soft light, making her look like a pure and flawless angel descending into the world. Those clear eyes were dyed with golden afterglow, and they were looking at all living beings with compassion. Everything is just right and just right. Warm and healing. A click broke the moment of tranquility. Tang Wan turned his head subconsciously, only to see a SLR hanging around Chen Chuo's neck. The dark lens was facing Tang Wan and Lu Lin, recording the moment. Looking at Tang Wan with confusion in his eyes, he took the initiative to say, "When the film is developed, I will show it to you. I'm just taking pictures of the sunshine." Perhaps this was the first time he lied. His eyes were not as cold as usual, with a slight tremor and a guilty conscience. Tang Wan didn't know whether what he said was true or not, but she heard Lu Lin next to her snorted coldly, "Is this the end? Take a few more pictures." As he spoke, he picked up Tang Wan, looked openly at the camera, and took this beautiful picture. Tang Wan slowly tightened his hand and looked at the camera with some fear. It's just that she was so good at disguise that those little moves deceived everyone. Only those who observe the world see Tang Wan's discomfort. He stretched out his hand to block the camera, and his voice was as steady as ever, boyishly, "Stop filming, the sun is going to set, we have to go to the attic quickly." Chris couldn't help but be quiet for a long time. He hurriedly put his arms around Chen Chuo's neck and said in a weird Chinese accent, "Yes, let's go quickly. Stop dawdling." Chen Chuo glanced down at Fu Wenzi's face, then latched onto the camera and nodded silently. Tang Wan, however, felt a different emotion in it. She looked at Chen Chuo with some confusion, and then at Fu Wenzi, sensing the weird atmosphere between them. It was very strange. It's just that no one mentioned it. And that strange appearance disappeared in just an instant. They were on the road again. The afterglow shines on the mountains, like golden mountains, making them more festive. It makes people feel passionate about Qingshan at a glance. Along the way, Sujiajia's expression went from expectant at the beginning to numb later on. "There are so many bugs here that they are annoying. In my last life, although this variety show was highly discussed, it was far less popular than it is in this life. And in the last life, these young masters and ladies were not so easy to get in touch with. There were only two of them. Everyone's eyes seemed to be on the top of their heads, and no one could look down on them. In this life, it's like I can't see that Tangwan is mute, and my attitude towards her is much better than my attitude towards myself. Sujiajia was a little reluctant. She obviously worked so hard to please those people, why couldn't she compare to Tangwan's look in her eyes? Thinking of this, Sujiajia quickened her pace and caught up with Tangwan's back. No matter how unwilling or displeased she is, she cannot leave Tangwan's side. She needs attention and heat. She needs to be the center. Tangwan looked at Sujiajia, who had been looking for a topic with Lulin, and felt a little uncomfortable for some reason. She always felt that Sujiajia was robbing her of what she owned. Thinking of this, Tangwan subconsciously stretched out his hand, hugged Lulin's neck, and buried his head between Lulin's neck. Lulin looked at Tangwan's movements and was slightly startled. In his impression, Tangwan rarely showed such intimate gestures. Tangwan is happy if he is willing to get close to him. So I turned to Tangwan and said with an obvious smile in her voice, "What's wrong? Why are you acting coquettishly all of a sudden? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 83. Tangwan couldn't answer Lulin's words. He just rubbed Lulin's cheek with his furry head, looking particularly dependent. But Tangwan's eyes fell on Sujiajia next to Lulin, with unprecedented strength. This is the only person she has, the only thing she has. She didn't want, wasn't willing, to share it with anyone. Tangwan has helped many children, and she knows it. She is willing to extend kindness to anyone and is willing to extend kindness to them. But she couldn't let the only thing she had become someone else's. Lulin brought a whole new world, one that allowed her to get rid of ignorance and get rid of that prison. Yes. In these short few days, Tangwan read many books that he had not had the chance to read at first. People's fear often comes from the unknown. The more you know, the more you will understand, and the more you know, the clearer you will know what kind of life you have lived before. You will also know that what you experienced before was abnormal. Tangwan wants to know who imprisoned him in that small world. She wants to know her past and who is lying. Who deprived her of a normal life. As for Tangwan, Lulin inherited the role of father. With Lulin, Tangwan felt like a normal child who could do whatever he wanted in the arms of his father. Although Tangwan is not a willful child, who doesn't expect to be favored. Sujiajia and Tangwan looked at each other for a moment, feeling a little uncomfortable. She has never seen such a strong Tangwan. Or maybe Tangwan has always been like this, but she didn't care before. When this thought crossed Sujiajia's mind, there was even a storm in her heart. If Tangwan really knows everything and just doesn't care, then what are her children jumping around in front of her? Is it considered a spice in her boring life? At this moment, Sujiajia even felt that Tangwan and Fu Wenzi were the same kind of person. It's just that their expressions are different. Fu Wenzi didn't care about anyone, so no one took him into consideration. Whoever Tangwan is the same in her eyes, so no one is biased. This is too scary. Can human nature really do this? The fear in Sujiajia's heart reached its peak at this moment. She could not even remember how she defeated Tangwan in her previous life. Perhaps it's because Tangwan never thought about struggling from the beginning, right? Or is it because Tangwan was suppressed from the beginning? Tangwan is like a weed that cannot be burned out. It only needs a spring breeze for it to grow wildly. Sujiajia stopped and was grabbed by Guo Yue's hand. Guo Yue, who has been running announcements these days, has a slight tiredness on his face, but he is in good spirits. He has never had such a dazzling moment, even though he knows that the resources he can obtain now will require him to pay a certain price. But there is no free lunch in this world. If he wants it, he must pay a certain price. Sujiajia was grabbed by Guoyuez and carried away. His voice is still a little timid, but his attitude is much tougher than before. In a voice that only he and Sujiajian could hear, he said, "Can you be a good boy? Didn't you see that Lulin didn't even pay attention to you?" At the beginning, Guoyuez also wanted to have a good talk with Sujiajia. Only sometimes, he could see a trace of disdain for him flashing through Sujiajia's eyes. This child is looking down on himself. But people live in this world, isn't it just for those few taels of silver? He earns money openly and honestly. Although it is not as good as other guests, it is better than most. Why does Sujiajia look at herself like this? From that moment on, Uzi didn't like Sujiajia very much. Just avoid it if he can. But things are different now. For the sake of his own future, Guoyuez will naturally not give in anymore. He will take action when necessary. Sujiajia's eyes widened and she looked at Guoyuez in disbelief. She did not expect that Guoyuez would treat her like this. I never thought that Guoyuez would say such a thing. Such hurtful words. The way she opened her eyes was a bit more cute than usual. At least it won't make people dislike it that much. Less shrewd and more childlike. Tangwan also looked away when Sujiajia was taken away. Just when she was retracting her attention, her peripheral vision glanced at Fu Wenzi standing aside. Slightly startled. Fu Wenzi in this state is a little strange. He seemed to have a hint of etch. The cold temperament on his body, from the inside to the outside, seems a bit deserted. He stood alone under the tree, looking at Tangwan with an inquiring look that Tangwan could not understand. Tangwan doesn't want to provoke such a lunatic. This kind of restrained and indifferent madman is inherently dangerous. He is a smart chess player and a manipulator who wants to control everyone. Dudu cannot be a lonely little pitiful person. Not to mention feeling deserted and fragile. Tangwan thought so in his heart. Don't meddle in this kind of people's business. Because they are like a bottomless swamp, you don't know when you will fall into it and be swallowed up completely by them. That's what reason thinks. But emotionally, Tangwan cannot turn a blind eye. She thought of Fu Wenzi dragging her into the group, of Fu Wenzi asking for a small cake, of that unsafe night when Fu Wenzi accompanied her. She really couldn't ignore Fu Wenzi's expectant eyes when he was alone. Finally, Tangwan patted Lulin on the shoulder and slipped away from him. Then he picked up his small backpack and walked to Fu Wenzi. Fu Wenzi's face was still expressionless. Just when he saw Tangwan walking towards him, he was a little surprised. At last, when Tangwan took out the small cake from his backpack, the curve of the corner of his mouth showed a more sincere warmth. He picked up the chocolate cake that Tangwan handed him. Ignore the angry look. Lulin looked at him. Looking at Fu Wenzi's expression and his shining eyes, Tangwan doubted his own intuition for the first time. Perhaps Fu Wenzi is not as indifferent as he thought. However, out of sight of Tangwan, Fu Wenzi raised his narrow eyes and glanced at his friend, with some provocation in his eyes. He opened his arms and gave Tangwan a hug, who was not used to being hugged by himself and seemed a little stiff. Those eyes were filled with his emotions. Hide your own ambitions. The curvature of the corners of the mouth seemed to be speaking. Look, the kitten is in my arms. This is the editor who is here to wish you all a happy new year. On the second day of the Lunar New Year, step on the villain and let's make a fuss together. Tutu took the high-speed train for 12 hours today, and it was really hard to write. I also drank a little wine to accompany my mother. Wow, I will make up for it after the Chinese New Year. I love you and I hope you all understand. I haven't been home for 3 years and miss my mother a little. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 84. Chen Shuo did not miss Fu Wenzi's eyes. His fingers rubbed the SLR on his chest and lowered his eyelids, wondering what he was thinking. This was probably the first confrontation between him and Fu Wenzi, and they both felt a little disgusted with each other. Chen Shuo felt that this was the first time he hated someone so much. Hate having the same preferences of the same kind. So that after I understood Fu Wenzi's look, I didn't even retreat in my heart. I still want to compete with him. Chen Shuo doesn't like fighting very much, which makes him feel that human nature is driven by desire and looks like a wild beast, with only the instinct of predatory. But now, like those wild beasts, he actually had the desire to fight Fu Wenzi. But is that love? Chen Shuo is still too young and subconsciously denies himself. He felt that his feelings for Tang Wan were a yearning for beautiful qualities. He has no feelings for Tang Wan between men and women, he simply wants Tang Wan's feelings like a moth to a flame. The desperate feeling of dedicating oneself, burning oneself, and satisfying others. That kind of pure kindness. It is the favorite thing for indifferent and selfish ghosts like them. Even Fu Wenzi, who is restrained, is no exception. It probably has nothing to do with love, just biological instinct. Tang Wan was only held by Fu Wenzi for a short time, and then he let go of her hand. He seemed to really like the small cake Tang Wan gave him, and said, "So you still remember it?" Tang Wan tilted his head in confusion, wondering why Fu Wenzi said such a thing. She has always been true to her word and would not be so unreasonable. When you promise something to others, you must do it. This should be the most basic social etiquette. What Tang Wan doesn't know is that what she is accustomed to is something that others have never been able to do. Fu Wenzi did not explain, just shook his head and retreated behind Tang Wan. Tang Wan still didn't understand the reason why Fu Wenzi did this. She was slightly startled, and then she heard Lu Lin's voice from behind, with a hint of impatient unhappiness, "What are you still talking about? Let's go find the room soon. The layout is different from the last time we lived separately. This time, everyone lives in the same house. It's just that the big house in front of me looks a little dangerous." Lu Lin looked at the house in front of him, stretched out his hand and shook it, and the dust on the house began to fall down. Lu Lin was so shocked that he ran to the side. "If you don't pay attention to this, he will be covered in dust." The camera that shot Lu Lin was shaking from side to side in a very unprofessional way, looking particularly wanton. The audience in the live broadcast room also laughed mercilessly. "Ha ha ha, it's the first time I've seen the expression on my brother's face so broken. His stinky face could not be kept, and it could be seen that he was really angry. Laughing to death, is this program group really not going to be criticized by Brother Lin? Ha ha ha. I think so. The look in Brother Lin's eyes makes you want to stab someone. With this look, I feel that the villain played by my brother is also more down to earth. You know, the last time I saw this look, he was in the fairy tale drama where he was angry and wanted to knife anyone he talked to, the old Taoist priest. Ha ha ha, your description is so graphic, it immediately reminded me of Brother Lin's costume. He really didn't even want his handsome face, and acted out the whole drama with a disfigured face. There is no way, I was the one who fell into the trap of that drama." Their topics got lost as they talked, and only a few barrages were still asking questions. "The program team can't do this. It's a safety hazard, so we should change places quickly. That's it, there may be some wild beasts in these deep mountains and old forests. With your situation like this, the safety of the guests cannot be guaranteed. It's too dangerous. Change the place quickly. I also said that you simply don't treat the guests as human beings. Their way of speaking is too strange, and their words are all due to the poor selection of the program. Normally speaking, this kind of obviously tormenting the guests will only make the audience interaction happier and more interactive. It's not that there won't be such a change of venue, it's just that it won't be said in such a large space. It's like being organized and disciplined. Some barrages didn't understand where their anger lay, and even asked. Ah, the program team has gone through safety tests when choosing such a place, so don't worry. Yes, it is impossible for the program team not to treat people as human beings. The programs produced by the fat director are all very tasteful. I clicked and read the words of the baby upstairs several times before I understood it. Ha 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 ha, I almost thought I was illiterate. They are trying to comfort those who are angry, but they have good intentions. But those people seem to have gotten worse. Now that you are saying this, when the little cubs are harmed, you people will all be accomplices. That is, a group of evil-minded people. The staff who were monitoring the barrage at all times looked at each other, then recorded the IP addresses and sneered. They panicked. Tang Wan, who was cleaning with Lulin, knew nothing about all this. Lulin just looked at the little boy who was cleaning seriously and suddenly asked, Tang Tang, are you willing to give up your own interests for the interests of the majority of people? Tang Wan heard Lulin's voice being dull, sounding like he was in a bad mood. Tang Wan tilted his head, like a kitten observing humans, and then raised the tablet with what was written on it. Then what I did was a good thing. Lulin was slightly stunned when he saw Tang Wan's question, then smiled bitterly and nodded, of course. It's a great thing. Tang Wan saw the sadness in Lulin's eyes, ran to Lulin's side with her short legs, and wrote on the tablet without hesitation. Of course, I will give up. The audience in the live broadcast room looked at Tang Wan's actions and felt that it was not easy for such a precocious child. To be honest, I think the children chosen for this program are really mature. They really know what they are doing and fully understand the implications of these questions. What was said above is correct, but don't you think it is too false? Does such a young child know what it means to sacrifice one's own interests? Do you know what is the collective interest of the majority? You don't care whether people understand it or not, but the answer to this question is very satisfying. I am also saying that some people are not living a satisfactory life in reality and suspect that no one has good intentions. Now even children as young as this are suspicious. Lulin looked at Tang Wan with a complicated expression, then squatted down, hugged Tang Wan tightly, and whispered in his mouth. You are the best kid. Real. You will be liked. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 85. Tang Wan blinked subconsciously. In fact, after Tang Wan gained Lulin's attention and love, she was no longer so persistent in her love for other people. As long as there is someone who likes her, no matter what the relationship is, to the shaky Tang Wan, it is like a strong and powerful rope, saving her from the abyss of falling. Tang Wan simply could not imagine what his life would be like if he had not been adopted by Lulin and had not entered the Lu family. After she knew all the injustices she had suffered before, Tang Wan really had no way to save herself in a world without any hope. Even if you save yourself, it may be like walking a dangerous tightrope. If you are not careful, you will fall off the cliff. When Tang Wan thought of this, his body suddenly felt like he had entered an ice cellar, his limbs were a little cold, and he was even shivering. It seemed as if some nightmare was appearing in front of Tang Wan's eyes. There is a larger and more gorgeous display screen with people on it and a tall building. I am looking down from above. Then she actually jumped. With the sound of touch, the whole world became quiet. Such a scene only flashed through Tang Wan's mind, but the suffocating feeling was like water drowning his nose, making Tang Wan unable to breathe for a while. She was panting heavily, and there was some sweat on her forehead. She looked pitiful. Lulin felt the figure of the little boy in his arms trembling, because he was surrounded by cameras. Without thinking, Lulin took Tang Wan into his arms and asked in a low voice. What's wrong, are you feeling unwell? The coldness on his body, the moment it came into contact with Lulin's force, it was as if the ice was broken, revealing the true appearance inside. Tang Wan seemed to be waking up from a nightmare. He grabbed Lu Lin's arm tightly and shook his head gently. But there was still a hint of fear in her eyes, and she looked a little uneasy. His eyes were just covered by a big hat and hidden in an unnoticed corner. Those who are good at observing the world are those who first see the only color in their own eyes. Also noticed Tang Wan's mood changes. But they remained silent and did not come forward. Stepping forward to talk to Tang Wan at this time will only make her feel uncomfortable. So this opportunity of comfort was given to Lu Lin. It didn't take long for Tang Wan's mood to ease. She left Lu Lin's arms and stared blankly at the dirty handkerchief in her hand. Looking at the dirt on Lu Lin's chest again, he felt unusually at a loss. Lu Lin also felt the coldness on his chest the moment Tang Wan left his arms. He lowered his head subconsciously and saw a stain on his white shirt. Lu Lin. The atmosphere is a bit awkward. But looking at the little cub in front of him, Lu Lin didn't lose his temper. He just stretched out his hand helplessly and rubbed Tang Wan's head, and whispered, "It's okay." He didn't have any intention of forcing Tang Wan to express all his thoughts, he just hoped that Tang Wan would be happy. After saying this, he stood up and prepared to go to the room nearest him to change his clothes. Tang Wan, who felt guilty in his heart, followed Lu Lin nervously like a little tail. Speaking of which, Tang Wan rarely did anything wrong. Only when she was around Lu Lin, she seemed to be a real child, and she didn't need to speculate on other people's thoughts or worry about small things. That's why it's easier to do something wrong. Lu Lin walked to the door of the room and was about to stop when he was bumped into by Tang Wan, who was walking behind him. There was a thud, and Tang Wan sat directly on the ground. His bright eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of mist, and he looked a little confused. Still a little bit at a loss. But it's much better than before. In the past, I started to be afraid immediately. Afraid of doing something wrong and being abandoned. Lu Lin thought of this, stretched out his hand, poked Tang Wan's nose, and said with a smile, "Why, not only did you stain my clothes, but you also touched porcelain." Rare, this word Tang Wan does not understand. Her first reaction was to stretch out her hand and sign. Then, thinking that Lu Lin didn't know sign language, she prepared to take out the tablet from the front pocket of her clothes. However, the next second, Lu Lin's voice sounded above her head. "Lu Lin, Penkai refers to malicious blackmail. For example, you are not injured now, but you are unwilling to get up from the ground." Upon hearing this, Tang Wan hurriedly got up from the ground, and then looked at Lu Lin in surprise as if he had realized something. Tang Wan realized from the last time that Lu Lin seemed to be able to understand his own sign language. It was just that last time she thought it was a simple one, so Lu Lin guessed it. Unexpectedly, Lu Lin really knows sign language now. Tang Wan knew that Lu Lin had learned sign language just for himself. Otherwise, why haven't Lu Lin learned from it after so many years? Exclusively for oneself. This sentence is so wonderful. Tang Wan felt like she was soaking in a warm hot spring. The grievances she suffered in her heart and the injuries she suffered on her body were all healed one by one in this gentle and ubiquitous water. She never thought she would be so lucky. She never thought that there would be people who would learn sign language just for themselves. But when this matter really appeared in front of Tang Wan, she felt that spring was nothing more than that. In her barren and decadent world, more and more flowers grow, and they become more and more beautiful. The world loves her more than she imagined. But Tang Wan did not forget her business. She pointed at Lu Lin's shirt, and then rubbed her little hands back and forth, as if she was washing clothes. Lu Lin raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Okay, why do I need you to wash clothes? Isn't it just a little dirty? I'll just rub it with my hands and it'll be fine. Just go and help clean it. Do everything within your ability and don't let me worry." As he spoke, he rubbed Tang Wan's furry head and pushed Tang Wan gently. In front of him was Go 11, who had been waiting for Tang Wan for a long time. Go and have fun. Children have the right to be willful. Tangwan blinked his eyes in confusion, as if he didn't understand why Lu Lin said such a thing. Until Go 11 ran towards Tangwan and said, "Tang Tang, let's go pick bracken. I heard they said that bracken salad is particularly delicious. There are a lot of mushrooms ahead, let's find a small backpack and pick mushrooms. There is a house at the foot of the mountain, let's go find those ladies to exchange for some staple food, otherwise we won't have anything to eat tonight." At this point, Go 11 leaned close to Tangwan's ear and said sternly, "I just took a look at the kitchen, there is nothing in it, it's empty." She was silent for a moment, as if she was devastated, and concluded, "I'll be hungry. Thank you Kanako, today is also the day I want to be the king of the sea, smart EC, Shanxia, I really can't type the symbol in front, woo woo, I will make 5 million in the future, Hibao can't reply to messages, lazy 213, a great reward from the 8 treasures, thank you, I love you. Thanks to the fugitive white lizard, a 155, Lian Yuranchenchenths, John Kyanjian, Shio 20230610935. B. Guess, Matcha, Janie, small basin. Melted ice cubes, Kanako, I will make 5 million in the future, 12 a monthly pass for a treasure. Love you guys. I will go home on the 15th and start updating on the 16th. Love you, Happy New Year. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 86. Chapter 86 Tang Tang, look, the big mushroom. Will you be hungry? You will be hungry. For Tangwan, this sentence was like a bolt from the blue. What she feared most before was not having food to eat, or not having any good food to eat. These are serious matters. So Tangwan and Go 11 hurriedly put on their small backpacks and ran out in a hurry. You can put everything away. Being hungry is a big deal, so don't let it go carelessly. Tangwan doesn't want to be hungry again. The feeling of being hungry is really uncomfortable. Go 11's voice was very low, so not everyone heard her. At least, the audience in the live broadcast room did not hear it. So they picked up the keyboard or mobile phone and wrote in the live broadcast room. They are lazy. Unlike Jia, she does everything in obscurity and is very serious. That's right, I remember that Jia was fishing alone last time and didn't even release a video. Even so, the program team cannot be too biased, treating a child so much. The fat director was not angry when he saw these barrages. He knew what he was doing. He just made a collection of the things Sujia had done, and then wanted to find a suitable time to release them. This appropriate time has a premise, that is, the matter they are investigating is related to Sujia. The fat director sincerely hopes that this matter has nothing to do with Sujia. It doesn't matter if she gets scolded, but if such a young child has anything to do with this matter, her future will be ruined. Thinking of this, the fat director sighed with a headache and cut the camera to Sujia's side. However, Sujia was holding scissors and cutting the flowers and grass behind. At the beginning, everyone praised me. Compared to Go 11 and Tangwan, Jia deserves praise for being so serious about her work. I also think that at first I liked Go 11's innocent and lively character and thought she would say whatever she wanted, but now I feel that she is too self-centered. How can any child be like this? She is not sensible at all. Everyone was working, so she found other children to play with herself. I also think this is the case. Now I feel that Jia is much more sensible, and the two children seem to be unable to pretend anymore and are completely ruined. At this moment, a slightly cold voice sounded from behind Sujia, interrupting Sujia's movements. These herbs you cut off are specially grown herbs. Sujiajia was startled. She turned her head in confusion and looked at Chenchuo, who was standing behind her. She used the scissors in her hand to cut off another branch. Chenchuo raised his eyebrows, opened his thin lips slightly, and said, 1,000. What? Sujiajia asked subconsciously, what 1,000? Chenchuo's eyes showed a rare hint of pity, and he said, the market price of this herb starts at 1,000. Sujiajia was obviously stunned for a moment, but she didn't feel much fear. In her previous life, as a popular star, she could earn millions a day, and she didn't take this little money of 1,000 or 2,000 seriously. To put it another way, even before she became a star, her monthly living expenses were tens of thousands. To Sujiajia, these more than 1,000 things were just a little bit of pocket money. So the disapproval in her eyes first appeared, and then turned into panic. Yes. For ordinary people, 1,000 is considered a lot of money. So Sujiajia's face showed the right look of fear, as if she was worried that she would not be able to pay. It's just that Chenchuo standing in front of her is not that easy to fool, and the indifference in Sujiajia's eyes can be seen at a glance. He felt a little strange. Different from this group of people. Sujiajia and Tangwan both came out of Xingxin orphanage. But why do Sujiajia and Tangwan have completely different attitudes towards money? The seemingly poor orphanage didn't seem to be as untouchable as they imagined. The next second, Chenchuo heard Sujiajia say in her trembling voice, I can't afford to pay. Her little mouth turned pale with fright, and she looked so pitiful. Li Yu on the side had long forgotten that Sujiajia had tricked him before, and took the initiative to step forward to comfort Sujiajia. It's okay, Sister Jiajia didn't do it on purpose. The herbs in this yard should have been bought by the program team, and it shouldn't be a problem if they are cut. At this point, Li Yu seemed to realize that what he said was somewhat ambiguous, and quickly added something. I mean, Sister Jiajia was careless, and no one will blame you. Sujiajia held her little hands tightly and lowered her head, looking particularly guilty and scared. In fact, she was actually tired of Li Yu being nosy. It would be great if Chenchuo answered himself like this. Chenchuo, who has always been indifferent, said such gentle words will definitely make everyone feel that they have a good relationship with Chenchuo, and he will get more attention. Everyone can see clearly that apart from Tangwan, the people who paid the most attention were Chenchuo and Fu Wenzi. Fu Wen had never had contact with Sujiajia in his previous life, and he still didn't know how to talk to him now. But Chenchuo is different. I met him in my previous life. Know what kind of person he is. If there was no Li Yu and only Chenchuo, he would probably just say something sarcastic. Clumsy, unable to do anything well, and left alone. Although the words were unpleasant, I did have communication with Chenchuo. I had an opportunity to break the ice and have a topic. It's a pity that this opportunity was ruined by Li Yu. As expected, Chenchuo sneered the next second, withdrew his gaze, and left here. Li Yu looked at the dejected Sujiajia, felt a little embarrassed and smiled, and then said, he doesn't have any ill intentions, he just can't speak. Ha ha ha, laughed to death, high EQ, not very good at talking, low EQ, poisonous tongue. Chenchuo's mouth is really suitable for quarreling. But Sujiajia really did something wrong. She chose the easiest pruning job, and then before she finished it, what happened to being slapped? That is, this herb was bought by the program crew. If it had not been bought, the family would have lost more than $1,000. For many families, this is a life-saving amount of money. I also said, you really don't regard money as money, you only act on emotions, right? Chenchuo obviously meant well to remind Sujiajia not to damage her hair, but now his poisonous tongue is all in your mouth. The barrage is noisy and everyone expresses their opinions and cannot tolerate each other. None of this was known to Tangwan and Go 11 who were picking mushrooms on another mountain. Go 11 raised a huge mushroom and placed it in front of Tang Wan, with bright surprise in his eyes. Tang Tang, look at the big mushroom. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 87. Tang Wan turned around and saw Go 11 holding a brightly colored mushroom in her hand. The entire mushroom umbrella shows an orange-yellow color, and at the very edge, there is a beautiful bright yellow color, which is very eye-catching. The whole mushroom is fan-shaped. Through Go 11's movements, you can also feel that this mushroom is much harder than ordinary mushrooms. Tang Wan tilted his head and felt that the mushroom looked familiar. He seemed to have seen it there before. Go 11 jumped up and ran to Tang Wan, shouting excitedly to her, "This mushroom is so big and beautiful, I want to keep it." Speaking of this, Go 11 seemed to suddenly remember that Tang Wan had told herself on the tablet before that the brighter the colors of most mushrooms, the more poisonous they are. The mushroom on my hand is so brightly colored, it must be a highly poisonous one. Thinking of this, Go 11 suddenly looked a little depressed. Poisonous mushrooms cannot be eaten. But it's so beautiful that Go 11 really likes it. Just when she was about to say something nice for the mushroom in her hand, she suddenly looked up and saw Tang's bright eyes. Go 11 was rarely at a loss and asked blankly, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" They haven't eaten the poisonous mushrooms yet, and Tang Tang has already started to hallucinate. Go 11 looked at Tang Wan nervously. If he found anything wrong, he would ask for help from the surrounding staff. However, Tang Wan just stretched out the plush jacket he was wearing, took out a tablet from the pocket on his stomach, and read on it. "This is Ganoderma lucidum. Yes, this is Ganoderma lucidum. It is still a complete Ganoderma lucidum. You can sell it for a lot of money." Tang Wan estimated that the Ganoderma lucidum in Go 11's hand weighed about 2 kilograms, and it could be sold for 4 to 5,000. This is a lot of money. Go 11 is not as sensitive to the price of Ganoderma lucidum as Tang Wan, but she has also heard of the value of Ganoderma lucidum. She looked blankly at the Ganoderma lucidum in her hand, and then looked up at Tang Wan. "Look at Ganoderma lucidum, and then look at Tang Wan." Then the voice was a little distorted, "Really? This is Ganoderma lucidum?" Tang Wan looked at his surprised friend and took a closer look to confirm. "Comparing the details in my mind, I confirmed that this is Ganoderma lucidum. If it is fake, it will be replaced. With this Ganoderma lucidum, they don't have to worry about food expenses these days." But Tang Wan did not express the sentence. Go 11 found the Ganoderma lucidum, and it was up to Go 11 to decide what to do with it. He could not step forward and make the decision for Go 11. Moreover, Tang Wan thought about these days when she was surfing the internet at the old house of the Liu family and saw the comments from the first season of New Dad. She felt that a small sentence would give other people various understandings. Many times, everyone may not notice the deeper meaning of what they said. But in the eyes of others, it is a point worth paying attention to. Tang Wan knew that if he brought everyone out, some people would interpret him as asking Go 11 to give up his Ganoderma lucidum. Will be kidnapped by people's morality. Tang Wan doesn't like this. She hopes that her friends can stay happy and not be influenced by anything. If you like it, keep it, and don't give it to anyone. So Tang Wan did not speak, just nodded, and then wrote on the tablet. "Then put it away quickly and don't break it." Go 11 held her Ganoderma in a daze, with a dull expression on her face, and her voice was a little soft, as if she was asking Tang Wan, or herself, "Can I keep it?" After saying this, she seemed to have thought of something, and added, "Isn't it very expensive? We can get a lot of money by selling it, and we can solve a lot of things." Go 11 spoke a little fast, seemed a little emotional, and the words he used were a little confusing and unclear. When she looked at Tang Wan, there was a hope in her eyes that she didn't even notice. It seemed like she wanted an answer. At present, only Tangwan can give her this answer. Tangwan thought for a while, raised the tablet in his hand, and read on it. That's your thing, it's something you like, and you have the right to deal with it. If you want to keep it, no one can take it away from you. Go 11 blinked his eyes, and his eyes were a little red. But she has always been a cheerful child, so even though she was a little depressed now, she quickly calmed down her emotions, then rushed to Tangwan and gave away the Ganodermal lucidum in her hand. He said firmly, "Then I will give it to you. Don't let your favorite things be taken away." She can take the initiative to give it away, but she cannot passively be taken away. This scene was captured by the camera and transmitted to Go 11's mother, who was following the program team. When she saw her son doing such a thing, her heart felt like she had been stabbed, and she felt pain in waves. Go 11 was robbed of something. Because my family comes from a martial arts family, the kids in the family fight each other for whatever they like, and the winner gets it. Go 11 was young and a girl, and she was not as strong as her brothers and sisters, so she was often beaten and had her toys and favorite things taken away. It's just that Go 11's mother grew up in such an environment and didn't realize the difference. Although Go Yun would mention it sometimes, most of the time Go Yun would remain silent, as indicated by his own eyes. So Go 11's toys would be snatched away again and again. The good thing is that Go 11 is getting stronger and dislikes her grandmother's side less and less. Did you really do something wrong? The law of the jungle is their rule of survival. Being robbed of toys is a small matter now. When you grow up, being robbed of family property and important people is a big deal. But looking at her little daughter on the screen, Go 11's mother suddenly realized that it was not a trivial matter for Go 11's toys to be robbed. For little Go 11, having her toys robbed is also a big deal. Thinking of this, Go 11's mother suddenly turned on her mobile phone and had a friendly communication with her natal family, saying something in her mouth. "I will communicate with you when I come back tomorrow. The prize will be my daughter's toy." Yes, very important. Those toys are equally important to her. On the other side, Tangwan did not exchange the Ganodermal lucidum given to him by Go 11 for money. Instead, he picked a lot of mushrooms and wild vegetables, and filled the small backpack before preparing to go back. It's just that Tangwan forgot that in this kind of jungle, the most indispensable thing is those crawling creatures. They like the dark and humid environment best, so they have already stood upright in the dark, watching the two cubs walking around in their territory. Be prepared to take action. Thanks to Dashan. EC Bayazai for the reward. Welcome the god of wealth on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year and make a fortune together. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 88. The cameraman following Tangwan and Go 11 saw the danger behind the two cubs at a glance. Just when he was about to put down the camera in his hand, he saw Go 11 standing next to Tangwan, picking up a wooden stick and piercing the snake that had been following them for an unknown length of time. Cameraman. The cameraman's eyes lit up, and he felt that the kid in front of him was really a good one. If the situation was not right now, he would have called his squad leader and asked him to come and see the kid who was born to eat their rice. If you don't sneak into their camp, the squad leader will definitely vomit blood. But when his eyes fell on the other cub, he shook his head with regret. What a pity. This cub is very observant and insightful, and can even remain calm under extreme circumstances. He is also a good seedling. If he is well cultivated, he will probably become the second best warrior. But, her body is really too weak. With those fragile body bones, if she had been trained harder, she would probably be dead. What a pity. If her body hadn't suffered so much damage, she would have been the same as Go 11. He is a born warrior, a child like a little son. In just a few hours of getting along, the child named Tangwan looked at him with worried eyes more than once, as if he was worried that he would be hurt. Thinking of this, the cameraman sniffed and thought softly in his heart, "What a good boy." Tang Wan didn't know that so many thoughts were running through the mind of the cameraman who was following her. When Go 11 took out a wooden stick and stabbed the snake, some memory fragments flashed through her mind. Still a vague figure. Tang Wan couldn't see her face clearly. He only knew that she picked herself up with her calloused hands, then rubbed her face, and said words that she couldn't quite understand. It's like the tinnitus that occurs when walking through a tunnel. When other people's voices reach your mind, it's like they are separated by an inaccessible film, separated by mountains and seas, and you can't hear them clearly. K. Tang Guan wants to hear it. She wanted to see the figure's face and hear her voice. But her memory was covered with a sad black curtain, and everything could not be seen clearly. She clearly knew that she had lived in deception and lies before. It was a paradise for many liars, and they had formed a city of deceit. The subtle memory covers the reality. Under the thick flowers, there is a cruel truth spreading. Tang Wan's face is not very good. Maybe as long as she thinks of those past events, she won't be too happy. Go 11, who was on the side, picked up the still struggling snake and said enthusiastically, "Hey! Tang Tang, we can have extra food tonight." "No." Tang Wan naturally couldn't speak. The only one who could speak was the cameraman standing behind them. Tang Wan's eyes fell on the cameraman, watching him pinch the snake that Go 11 had grabbed, and then threw it far away, while he kept saying, "Why are you so naughty? Can the snake be played with in the hand? Even if it is not poisonous, won't it hurt if it bites you?" Go 11 was dumbfounded by his series of machine gun-like words. In the end, she could only frown and turn her head reluctantly, feeling very unhappy. Tang Wan stretched out his hand, patted her back, and motioned Go 11 to put on the small backpack with him and prepare to go back. Fortunately, Go 11 is like this, his temper comes and goes quickly. I was happy again when I saw the full small backpack. The sense of accomplishment in mushroom hunting comes from more and more mushrooms and the surprises given by the mountains. You never know if you look under the fallen leaves and you will find poisonous mushrooms or edible mushrooms. Just like you never know, what will happen next second is an accident or a surprise. When Go 11 and Tang Wan returned to the house, they found that the atmosphere inside was a bit strange. Sujiajia was crying, and Lu Lin's face looked a little ugly. Even the good old Li Yu had a bit of embarrassment on his face. Director Li waved to his son and told him not to stand next to Sujiajia. After all, this was no small matter. Li Yu thought for a while, but still didn't leave Sujiajia's side. If everyone stood opposite her, then she would be really pitiful. Tang Wan held the hemp rope strap of the small backpack with both hands and looked at the living room with a blank look, as if asking, "What's going on?" Lu Lin waved to Tang Wan, took Tang Wan's small backpack, then took out a handkerchief and wiped Tang Wan's paws clean naturally. He said, "Going out to pick mushrooms again?" Tang Wan nodded and saw Lu Lin take out the big Ganoderma lucidum from the small basket on his back, twirling it in his hand, and opening his mouth in a manner that looked like a noble and fun-loving young master in ancient times. "I'm lucky to have such a beautiful Ganoderma lucidum." Before Tang Wan had time to sign out in sign language that this was a gift from Go 11, Sujiajia on the side suddenly rushed to Tang Wan, grabbed Tang Wan's hand, and said excitedly, "Wan Wan, you are the best, you will help me." Tang Wan tilted his head strangely, looking at Sujiajia who grabbed her hand, and subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand. However, Sujiajia pulled Tang Wan tighter. Her tears kept falling down as if they were worthless, and she said, "Ugh, I accidentally cut off the flowers raised by this landlord, and she wants us to pay 5,000. Tang Wan was slightly startled when he heard this number. He looked up and saw the disapproval in Sujiajia's eyes. She subconsciously wanted to take back her hand and stay away from Sujiajia. Yes. Sujiajia is different from herself. She has a mother, and her mother will give her money. Of course she can look down on 5,000 yuan, or she can be indifferent to it. But for Tang Wan, who was in the orphanage back then, not to mention 5,000, even 5 yuan or 50 cents would be taken away. She couldn't buy a candy, nor could she have a flower of her own in the city of flowers. Now, the gift she had just received from her friend was being used openly by Sujiajia. Tang Wan is kind and transparent, but not stupid. She also has things she cares about. So Tang Wan withdrew his hand, shook his head, and shouted excitedly, "Ah!" The sign language was typed very fast, like a seal, and there were ghost images. No, this ganodermalucidum was given to me by Zixi. That was the mistake you made, and you should be brave enough to bear it yourself, instead of asking me to bear it for you now. Tang Wan's expression was unprecedentedly serious. He took the ganodermalucidum in Lulin's hand back and hid it. Her movements are quick, and she looks like a little money lover putting away his little treasure. Somewhat cute. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 89. It's just that such cute little gestures are not so pleasant in Sujiajia's eyes. She will only think that Tang Wan is resentful of herself and is unwilling to help her out. He is a selfish person. I didn't think about how I treated Tang Wan at all, I just blamed and demanded. Never think that there is anything wrong with yourself. So after Tang Wan rejected Sujiajia, Sujiajia's expression went blank for a moment. What happened? Why doesn't Tang Wan play his cards according to the routine? Isn't she the kindest person? Why are you not so kind to yourself now? Sure enough, Tang Wan is the most hypocritical person. Knowing that I am not as rich and powerful as these people, I will not help myself. Thinking of this, Sujiajia's eyes even showed some resentment, which made her cute face look more distorted. Somewhat scary. Tang Wan did not take these negative emotions to heart. Nor did he take Sujiajia's resentment into consideration. She hid her treasure, then without looking back she picked up a mushroom in her basket and placed it in front of Sujiajia. Then he took out the tablet and it said, "That's all there is, there are so many more that I don't have either." Tang Wan was not joking. Most of these mushrooms were eaten by everyone. She could only give 1 or 2 to Sujiajia. Otherwise there won't be enough to eat. As for why he only gave 1 instead of 2, it was entirely because Tang Wan didn't like Sujiajia. Who hasn't lost his temper yet? Tang Wan had no choice before, but now she also has a backer. Lulin looked at the little kid who suddenly puffed up his chest, and didn't know what she was feeling proud of. But looking at the increasingly cheerful Tang Wan, he also felt a sense of satisfaction as a carefully cultivated flower gradually bloomed. Such a sense of accomplishment is completely incomparable to those in racing competitions. The only thing that can be compared to it is probably when I won the Grand Slam Best Actor. That sense of satisfaction, and that feeling of pride. It felt like Lulin had found a new goal. I want to see how far Tang Wan can grow. But Sujiajia wouldn't think so much. She was in anger and would only think that Tang Wan was mocking and looking down on herself. But because of his own personality, he just pulled the mushroom and smiled coquettishly. He said, this. Thank you anyway, Weavua, she sobbed, looking pitiful. However, few people present sympathized with her. Most of them have been learning how to recognize people since they were young. Observing others and observing the world is almost instinctive. So you can see through Sujiajia's skin and her restless soul. Especially Fu Wenzi, who wiped the table in front of him without even raising his head, looked at Chenchuo in front of him, and said, "Why are you so kind?" Chenchuo knew what Fu Wenzi was talking about. It was nothing more than saying that she had just walked out of the door and went to tell Sujiajia that what she had cut off was an expensive herb. If she didn't remind herself, Sujiajia would probably cut more. Although the program team bought these herbs, it still costs money. Even if the investment in Sujiajia cannot be recovered, Sujiajia will also be in debt. Fu Wenzi has long known what kind of person Sujiajia is. Among these dirty jobs, she will definitely choose the easy job of cutting flowers and grass. She is a strawbag with no connotation. Naturally, she cannot recognize those herbs that are similar to weeds. Just cut it off and she will be in debt. And the people behind her will definitely provide money to ensure that Sujiajia has no stain after her debut. At that time, you can probably find their traces through those accounts. It's a pity that this plan was interrupted by Chenchuo. Of course Chenchuo could guess Fu Wenzi's plan, but this plan was far less simple than what he said. After all, Fu Wenzi was not a noble person. He is a young, venomous snake that has not grown up. The highly poisonous kind. He probably just wanted Sujiajia to be ruined. He wanted Sujiajia to be isolated and helpless, with no one to help her. Chen Shuopan revealed Fu Wenzi's true thoughts, then shook his head and said, "I don't know how she offended you." When he said this, he did not have any sympathy for Sujiajia. In Chen Shuo's view, except for those who can catch his eye, no one needs to give too much emotion. That's a waste. The reason why he warned her was probably because he knew that Sujiajia in front of him could only play tricks on Tang Wan. Thinking of this, Chen Shuo twitched the corners of his mouth and his smile became a little stiff. Fortunately, Tang Wan didn't really agree to everything. Just watching Tang Wan hide the ugly Ganoderma lucidum, she suddenly remembered that she still had a few boxes of Ganoderma lucidum at home. Maybe she would give them to Tang Wan, and she would hide them carefully like a little hamster. Sujiajia saw that no one was helping her, and she felt a little unable to get off the stage. In the end, Li Yu sighed, took a piece of jade from his neck, handed it to Sujiajia, and said gently, "Sister Jiajia, don't cry. Give this to the landlord. I should have enough jade." Tang Wan subconsciously looked at the fat Li Yu and found that Li Yu's father didn't say anything to stop him. Very strange. Such things cannot be given away casually. Sujiajia felt the temperature on the jade and felt a little sick. She felt a little uncomfortable when she thought that the jade was still attached to the fat man's body just now. But now only Li Yu gave her a step, and she had to get off. Hence his eyes were red, he nodded, and said softly, "Thank you, brother Li Yu." Li Yu showed a naive smile and shook his head, but looked at you with a somewhat reluctant look. Sujiajia handed the jade to the program team, and then ran back, wanting to talk to Tang Wan, but she did not overtake Go 11 and Lu Ziyi. The two of them occupied the two sides of Tang Wan, one on the left and the other on the right, shouting at each other. "You're so annoying, Tang Tang and I picked mushrooms, so you should go process them with me. Tang Tang and I are family, and Tang Tang is my aunt, please stay away from us." "Humph, Tang Tang and I are good friends, you call me Aunt Tang Tang, so you should call me Auntie too." When Lu Ziyi heard this, his expression on his face was stunned, and then he looked at his uncle as if he was asking for help. At this moment, Lu Ziyi realized that he seemed to be the youngest one here. How can anyone be their elder? Lu Ziyi looked like a heartbroken puppy, which instantly dispelled the weird atmosphere of the scene. He rushed forward and hugged Tang Wan, just to try to cheat. "We are all juniors now, can these elders please keep me out of the way?" He carried Tang Wan with peace of mind and began to run out, leaving only the people in the room stunned for a moment, then got up and ran away. Especially Go 11, who was so angry that he stamped his feet. "Lu Ziyi, you are so shameless. Thanks to Moran.ec Bayazai for your monthly ticket, I love you. I almost thought there would be no thank you session today, ha 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 ha." The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, Do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 90. Chapter 90. Everyone is a herd follower. Lu Ziyi ran very fast, giving Go 11 no chance to catch up with him. Sujiajia just landed in the middle of the room, standing there awkwardly. Only Guoyuez did not forget to keep an eye on Sujiajia's work content and walk to her side. Originally, Guoyuez didn't want to comfort Sujiajia. After all, this child was very thoughtful. Those who have been in the entertainment industry for several years are basically not stupid people. Naturally, Sujiajia's little thoughts cannot escape Guoyuez's eyes. Just looking at Sujiajia standing aside, I felt that she was a little too pitiful. Guoyuez also didn't expect that after seeing so many dirty things in the entertainment industry, he still couldn't help but meddle in other people's business. He smiled self-deprecatingly, and then said to Sujiajia, "Can't you not provoke Tangwan? You know there are so many people around her." His voice was so low that only Sujiajia could hear it. Sujiajia slowly raised her head. There was no sadness on her face that should have shown an innocent expression, but only anger. There is also jealousy. The ambition in it is as strong as that of any adult. Mr. Guoyuez was a little frightened. However, Sujiajia only showed that look in her eyes for that moment, and after that, her eyes did not look so ambitious. Most of them are as innocent and lively as usual. Looking at Guoyuez, he smiled sweetly, but said in a cold tone, "Get out of here." Her voice was very small and a little thin, which made Guoyuez think for a moment that he had heard wrongly. How else could I hear such cold and weird words from such a young child? Her twisted and contradictory movements and expressions were like an abyss full of desire, opening her mouth to swallow everything. At this moment, Guoyuez could no longer treat Sujiajia as a child. Guoyuez felt the sense of disobedience in Sujiajia. She doesn't seem like a child. It is more like an adult soul falling into this small body. On the other side, others did not pay attention to the confrontation between Guoyuez and Sujiajia. They watched these little brats playing with relaxed expressions on their outstanding faces, and they were also enjoying the tranquility and comfort in front of them. Only Pei Yunzhou suddenly spoke up and asked Director Li next to him, "You just let Li Yu give that piece of jade away?" Director Li's gentle face had an unchanged smile. His eyes looking at Li Yu had the warmth of a father, and he said, "Let him remember it for a long time. In this world, not all good intentions are rewarded. If he doesn't let himself be bitten by a poisonous snake, how can he know that some people are just mud and can't hold up the wall?" Pei Yunzhou shook his head, shrugged, and said exaggeratedly, "Wow, it's really scary to have a father like you." Director Li didn't care about Pei Yunzhou's cynicism, he just pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose as if nothing had happened, and remained quiet. Tangwan slipped out of Lu Ziyi's arms and ran to Li Yu, looking at Li Yu with his obsidian eyes. Li Yu was a little puzzled, but still asked gently, "What's wrong?" Tangwan took out a small pink flower from behind and handed it to Li Yu. Li Yu looked at the flowers in front of her and wondered why Tangwan gave them to her. Then I saw Tangwan holding up a tablet with something written on it. "Let's go and redeem the jade pendant." Li Yu felt that the wind around her had become quiet. They blew the flowers all over the mountains and fields, bringing the fragrance of flowers and blowing away his small hesitation. Li Yu was actually a little hesitant when giving Sujiajia the jade pendant. That was a birthday gift from his mother when he was 5 years old. Li Yu has always cherished the jade pendant these years. He gave it away without warning. If he said it was not uncomfortable, it would definitely be a lie. But my mother always said, "Just do good things and don't worry about the future." He wanted to do good, so he lost his jade pendant. Sadness is temporary, but helping others is worth it no matter how big or small it is. However, Sujiajia's actions made Li Yu feel that his kindness was unnecessary. After all, when she handed the jade pendant to the program crew and came back, she didn't even have time to look at herself before running towards Tangwan. Li Yu doesn't have to ask for anything. Just want a word of affirmation. His sadness was not noticed by Sujiajia, but fell into Tang Wan's eyes. Through those beautiful black eyes, he seemed to see himself crying. He seems to have no way to deceive himself, and he is not sad. Li Yu is a little fat man, but this is not because he wants to be a little fat man. It was because of a congenital deficiency that I took a lot of medicine and made myself fat. After all, life is more important than appearance. But my classmates don't know. They only know that there is a fat man with limited mobility in their class who can be bullied. Anyway, he just smiled and forgave everyone. Li Yu looked at the flowers handed over by Tang Wan. Some of them did not dare to take them. He touched everywhere on his body, but found that he could not give Tang Wan anything. The next second, Tang Wan put an orange candy into his fleshy hand. Then he raised Li Yu's hand, took the candy, and gave the flower to Li Yu. She shook the candy in her hand, as if to say that she had received a gift in return. And Li Yu looked at the flowers in his hand, and big tears fell from his red phoenix eyes that were almost invisible because of the flesh. He burst into tears and wiped his eyes with his sleeve so hard that red marks appeared on his young face. Hand in his mouth, he still said, I'm sorry, I am very grateful for your flowers. I want to be good friends with you. Can you take me with you? These words rolled around in Li Yu's throat, and he really didn't have the courage to say them out. He is unsociable. But that's because the children's herd mentality turned him into an object that everyone could bully. Any child who is friendly to him is unsociable and will be bullied. So in order to fit in with the group and to become a non-weird child, they didn't need anyone to give orders, so they all isolated Li Yu. This is the first time that Li Yu received a kindness without giving anything. Li Yu burst into tears. He took off his coat and shook it, but found only an old coin inside. He put the coin into Tang Wan's hand like a treasure, and said, thank you, thank you. The choking voice was carried far, far away by the wind, and finally got a moment of rest on a calm coast. End of this chapter.